So here's this vortex swirling with all things wanted by you. And here's you over here holding yourself apart from it by the habit of thought, by the thought you keep thinking, by the chronic thought, by the drum you keep beating, by the online chat group that you will respond to, by the stuff that you are reading and talking, by the things that you're keeping alive with your conversations with your friends. You are holding yourself, not meaning to, not wanting to, apart from who you've become. So now let's say that you are in a state of frustration. Oh, now not so far from your vortex. And in frustration, this vortex is every now giving you a glimpse of something you want. In fact, every now and again, you get a feeling of exhilaration. You sort of get an idea about something. You're closer to the vortex and you're feeling better. Once you get to a place where you are feeling the slightest little bit of hopefulness about this thing that you want, you are so within range that now the universe is starting to give you clues, little hints of things. You say, oh, I'm being tested. Show up. You begin to see exactly what you want being driven by someone else. You are in the vicinity, and we want to say to you that once you reside pretty systematically, nearly chronically, in an attitude of hope, you're close enough now that the universe is giving you enough evidence of your close proximity to what you want that now you're almost inside the vortex. And when you find a little bit, only a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit of belief, you're in. And in the moment that you move within vibrational range, now things start showing up. Things show up all over the place. You begin to feel the cleverness and the clarity and the power of your beingness. Now, most of you are moving in and out of your vibrational escrow all day, every day, depending upon the subject. There are some subjects you're so far away, nobody wants to talk to you about that anymore. You know those subjects. You have friends that have them, that issue they've got. And they always, no matter what you're talking about, they manage to bring the conversation around to that issue. If you keep beating the drum of where you are in relationship to what you want, you just hold that tension. Now, there are other subjects that you feel more hopeful about, and so the universe is yielding some things to you relative to some subjects and not so much on others. And it all has to do with your relationship to who you have become. However, we want to say to you that your usual attitude about one thing or the other is consistent enough that you have a pretty steady relationship with your vibrational escrow. You know people who are so knowing of well-being, who so expect things to go their way, that it looks like the universe just knocks itself out to give them what they want. You barely hear them verbalizing that they would like to see something or know something or have something, and they have it. And if that makes you feel exhilaration, you jump right into your vortex where you get some too. But if it makes you feel jealous, if you say it's not right, if you start looking at the disadvantage that you have while they seem to be having the advantage, then you hold yourself, it seems to be deliberately, we know it isn't, outside of the universe's ability to yield to you because you hold all of the power. You're either allowing alignment or you're disallowing alignment. We call it allowing or resisting. You're allowing the well-being that is yours, that is constantly being summoned on your behalf, or you are not. It really is that simple. And the better you feel, the more you are allowing it, and the worse you feel, the more you are not. There are people, even right here in this room, who have chronic thoughts of despair. There are people all around you who have pretty chronic thoughts of frustration and overwhelmment. You have established these emotional set points where you've been observing what is, and what is changes so slowly. To really get what's over here in your vibrational escrow, to get the abundance that is there, millions and millions of dollars already gathered for each of you, to get the things you want, the clarity, the life experiences, the fulfillment, the sense of who you are, it is such a short vibrational distance from where you are. But you've got to start telling the story of your life in new terms. You cannot continue to explain what is and move to a whole new place. As you explain what is, you hold yourself apart from what has become on all of those subjects. Jerry and Esther, because they move about in their monster bus, and because it is a monster machine with so many moving parts, it gives them so much opportunity to observe what is. And it gives them so much opportunity to observe what is and explain it to others in very comical fashion. In other words, when the giant awning that is the full length of the bus goes out and then goes crazy and binds itself all up, and then the bus can't be driven because the awning isn't in, it seems like a story worth telling. When people from all around the campground come and look, first of all, they've never seen such a beautiful machine. And they're mumbling in the background, "Do you know how much that cost? Do you know how much that cost? Do you know how much that cost?" And then when they see something that cost about as much as all the other things in the campground put together, when they see it malfunction, there is a great cry of delight from the crowd. The little boy, he's 10, he says, "Gee, lady, seems like something that expensive ought to work." And Esther says, "That's exactly the story I tell. It ought to work. And there is a deep-seated resentment somewhere within me that it isn't working." It's like a conspiracy. It's like a universal conspiracy, or at least the manufacturers of the coach. They have put little time bombs in this bus. And they've planned it just right at the most inconvenient of opportunities. Well, of course, you all know that Esther needs to tell a new story. She can't find what she is looking for in anything as she is looking at what she does not want. And many say, "But Abraham, it's reality. Don't we sort of kind of have to face reality? They certainly couldn't drive around with their awning hanging out, and it wasn't in. Don't they have to face that reality?" And we say, of course you have to face reality. But the emotional slant you put on it is what matters most. Now, Jerry and Esther, they were laughing. They were having a good time. Except when Jerry went to get his tools, the bin where the tools are wouldn't open. Something's wrong with the lock. And the little boy says, "Gee, mister, seems like something that costs this much ought to open." So Jerry got his only tool, a hatchet. And he climbed up on the ladder and began pounding on the piece that seemed to be the culprit. And then the awning began to move, but because it was all tangled up in the back awning, it was making more of a problem. So he's shouting at Esther, "Stop the awnings from moving." But the machine that operates the awning is not working. And Esther has a panel of buttons on the wall. There are 16 of them that operate the awnings. And they all say different things in code. Curbside forward, curbside middle, curbside rear, retract, extend. There were so many options. And in a moment of panic, Esther could do nothing other than push all of them. So the awnings are moving out and in, and the campers are delighted. And Esther is laughing so hard she pees her pants. The irony of all of this, it's like the universe is saying to them, you have brought yourself to such huge creation, such fast motion, and such big monster machine. And when you get a little out of alignment under those conditions, a whole lot can go wrong all at once. Jerry and Esther were delighted when all of a sudden the awning seemed to come to its senses and it just stowed itself. It put all of the pieces back back just in the way that it was supposed to, and it stowed itself. And as Esther was talking to technical support back at the plant, who didn't know anything about these awnings because it's only the second bus that they've ever been on, the man said, "Push the button and see what happens." And Esther said, "In your dreams. I'm never pushing that button again as long as I live." So what we're getting at here is that stuff happens, doesn't it? Things happen that you can't not give your attention to. When we say don't face reality, that has to sound like madness, because there are things that you have to look at. There are things you have to do. There are things you have to do that you don't want to do. You are in situations sometimes that you have to deal with. But what we are getting at here is, if you will tell the story that lifts your energy, this story that we told you, even though it was about reality, lifts energy. In other words, there was nothing serious going on. Everyone was having a wonderful time. Jerry and Esther, they didn't even have much trauma, because the trauma was immediately replaced by what they needed to do. And as they began to become solution-oriented, they actually began to enjoy the adventure. And they have dozens of new camping friends. And so we want you to just lighten up. We want you to realize that even when it feels like something bad has happened, even when it's something that is much more intense than an awning that is malfunctioning, maybe it's something going on with your body or with your relationship or with someone that you care about, we want you to know that if you can find a way of reframing the story so that you can laugh about it and mean it rather than cry about it and mean it, you move closer to the vibrational escrow where all of your solutions are. And do you know that every time you deal with some real life situation, you ask for an improved life experience? And as you ask for an improved life experience, it's there for you, waiting for you to become a vibrational match to it. You've just got to find a way of telling the story in a way that feels increasingly better to you. Esther said to Jerry that they're on their way. As soon as they leave here, they're going to drive steadily to the place where this bus was born. And they know that those people will restore it. There's something that is out of whack in its electronic system that is affecting many things. And they'll fix it. Esther knows that they will fix it. And she says to Jerry, you know, the feeling that I have and the attitude that I want to project to them is, I know that you can fix this, and I am so appreciative that you can and will. And she remembers that last time she was on her way back there with things on her list, not this many things. With things on her list, her attitude was not one of appreciation, it was one of blame. It was one of, it shouldn't be happening, rather than, I'm appreciative that you're going to be able to do something about it. That small difference in the story that she's telling. In other words, she had a conversation with a man that she's talked to many times, and he's never been open and fun with her. And they were laughing so hard that Esther had to stop at a rest stop so that she could continue the conversation. In other words, she can feel that her vibration about this has shifted, and therefore her resolutions are on her doorstep. And the thing that we want you to understand is, when you get into that place where you have decided that nothing should ever go wrong in your life, you're on the wrong side of creation, because here in this environment in which you are creating, there are all kinds of options that give you the clarity about what you want. We want you to lighten up and stop asking yourself to be on the cusp of perfection at all times. It's not logical in this contrasting world in which you live. We just want you to take what's happening lighter. We want you to release the tension within you and stop holding yourselves to perfect standards, and instead accept that this magnificent life in which you are living is always working to accommodate you. Always working to accommodate you, no matter how it looks. No matter how it looks. Sometimes the things that in the moment of them seem the darkest and the worst, and the most unjust, the most unfair, the most inappropriate, sometimes those things are the things that cause you to put the biggest deposit into your vibrational escrow. And when you lighten up as time goes by, you are served so by that contrasting experience. And we're not encouraging you to go out and get into trouble just so you can fill up your escrow. There's plenty there. You got enough going on there to keep you happy for 20 or 30 lifetimes. We're just saying, don't freak out when you're in the middle of a what is that causes you some distress. Just do your best to tell the story from where you are in an improved state of being until you bring yourself to a place of speaking of trouble as past tense, of trouble as something that is so rare, of trouble as something that you almost look fondly upon, because it is true in every case. The trouble that you've lived has caused the beingness that is you.